You spend your life attempting to manage the visible, thinking that if you can account for the variables you see, you are safe. You analyze the market, you measure your competition, and you calibrate your effort to match the expected return. This is the hallmark of the linear mind, a biological operating system designed for the predictable cycles of the savannah, but utterly useless in the high volatility arena of the modern world. You believe that risk is a choice between doing something dangerous and staying in your safe zone. You are wrong. Safety is not the absence of danger. It is the presence of a capped upside combined with a hidden, catastrophic downside. By playing the standard game, you are accepting a life of negative asymmetry. You are working 40 hours a week for a fixed salary, a capped reward, while carrying the risk of a systemic collapse that could erase your entire existence in a single afternoon. You are a biological amateur, trading your most precious resource, time, for a guarantee that isn't worth the paper it's printed on. The sovereign man understands that the only way to escape the herd is to stop hunting in the center of the distribution and start hunting in the fat tails. He looks for the black swan, the rare, unpredictable event that changes everything. He doesn't fear the outlier. He builds a life where he is the primary beneficiary of the chaos. We are now presecting the mechanics of asymmetric risk, showing you how to invert your relationship with uncertainty and why your current obsession with predictability is the primary engine of your eventual destruction. You are currently a victim of your own linear hallucinations, and the storm you don't see is already on your horizon. Let us analyze the biology of risk aversion. Your amygdala is a primitive sentinel that views uncertainty as a physical predator. In the wild, the unknown was the sound of a rustle in the tall grass. It was the smell of a rival pack on the wind. To your ancestors, uncertainty equaled death. So the brain developed a deep, visceral bias toward the familiar. This survival software was perfect for a world of static threats, but in 2026, it has become a mental prison. It forces you to stay in your pillar of society role, repeating the same scenarios and seeking the same safe outcomes, while the world around you is undergoing a series of massive, non-linear shifts. You are biologically programmed to fear the black swan, so you ignore its existence until it lands on your head. You stay in the middle, where the energy is low and the competition is high. You are a biological subordinate, obeying a prehistoric code that no longer applies to the digital and financial landscape you inhabit. The apex predator has learned to override this code. He has thermal hardened his nervous system to tolerate the silence of the outlier. He understands that in a world of 8 billion people, the average is a death trap. He looks for the convexity, the situations where he can lose a small amount of energy if he is wrong, but gain an infinite amount of life force if he is right. He is not gambling. He is positioning himself to be the only one standing when the unexpected occurs. The masses are currently linear slaves. They move in predictable patterns, following the normal scenarios provided by the social machine. They believe that success is a matter of incremental progress, getting the degree, getting the promotion, getting the incremental raise. They are short-time preference organisms, incapable of seeing the hidden risks built into their own stability. They are like turkeys being fed every day by the farmer. Every day the farmer feeds them. The turkey's confidence in the farmer's kindness grows. To the turkey, the farmer is a safe variable. But on the day before Thanksgiving, the turkey encounters a black swan. Its entire reality is inverted, and its safe life is revealed as a long-term slaughter. You are currently the turkey. You think your job security and your stable economy are evidence of safety. They aren't. They are merely the silence before the axe falls. To move from the turkey to the predator, you must first priznai chto zavias. Admit that your linear life is a vulnerability. Admit that you are carrying a catastrophic downside that you cannot even name. Only when you face the fragility of your safe zone can you begin the hunt for the outlier. We must address the law of convexity. In a linear world, you are paid for your time. In an asymmetric world, you are paid for your orientation. The sovereign man does not look for steady returns. He looks for the free options. He places small bets on a dozen different digital and strategic frontiers. He knows that 9 of them will fail, and the cost of those failures is negligible. A few hours of focus, a small unit of capital. But the 10th bet is the black swan. It is the viral video that reaches millions, the investment that returns 1,000-fold, or the relationship that unlocks a new hierarchy. This single outlier pays for all the failures and provides the surplus energy required to build build an immortal dynasty. Most of you are too afraid of those 9 small failures to ever reach the 10th win. You are so terrified of looking foolish or losing a microdose of your comfort that you stay in the center, where the only thing you can win is a slightly better version of your current slavery. You are a biological failure of ambition, wasting your life force on a capped game. Recognition of this asymmetry is the first step of your extraction from the matrix. You must stop trying to be correct and start trying to be strategically exposed to the unexpected. The environment of 2026 is a black swan factory. The convergence of AI, decentralized finance, and the collapse of the old social contracts is creating a landscape of absolute volatility. To the linear slave, this is a nightmare. To the persistence hunter, this is the ultimate hunting ground. While the giants are overheating because their massive, rigid structures cannot adapt to the chaos, the sovereign man is a ghost in the noise. He is lean, he is agile, and he is positioned for the asymmetric break. He understands that slepo povtorenie czujich scenariev, put v nikuda, that following the professional path of the 20th century is a guarantee of irrelevance in the 21st. You must build your own risk architecture. You must have the coldness to walk away from the small wins that require 100% of your time and move toward the big plays that require 100% of your orientation. You are a unique biological machine, and you were not designed to be a gear in a predictable engine. You were designed to be the anomaly that breaks the engine and harvests the scrap. The architecture of convexity is not built on effort. It is built on positioning. You believe that the harder you work, the more you earn. This is the industrial era lie designed to keep the human motor running until it burns out, a psychological cage for the unevolved. In the realm of asymmetric risk, effort is a commodity, but optionality is the currency of the sovereign. You are currently trapped in a linear loop where you sell your life force in 1-hour increments. Your downside is capped by your health, but your upside is capped by the clock. This is the definition of negative asymmetry, carrying the burden of the hunt with none of the potential for the kill. To become the master of the environment, you must transition to convex assets, systems where the cost of creation is fixed, but the reach and the reward are infinite. A digital engine, a code, a content piece. These are your black swan traps. You set them in the digital forest and you maintain a cold, clinical silence. Most of these traps will catch nothing, and it does not matter because the cost of setting them was negligible. But when the outlier lands, it delivers more life force in a single day than a year of linear labor. You are currently wasting your metabolic energy on safe scenarios while ignoring the fact that your own self-organization is failing. For those who realize that samomune vitashchit and need a clinical plan, there is the protocol, $260, which provides a strictly described route to building these asymmetric YouTube AI empires. It is a structured route for those ready to stop being the prey and start being the hunter. You must understand the neurochemistry of optionality. When you have multiple asymmetric bets running, your brain exits the state of survival anxiety and enters the state of predatory observation. You are no longer desperate for the next meal because you know that a black swan is inevitable if you maintain the pressure. This shifts your internal signal from prey to sovereign. You begin to move with the clinical indifference I have described, where the opinions of the poles in the fence no longer register in your nervous system. You are no longer a guest in the market, you are the house. But this requires you to vypíši svoj samě očividně iluzí regarding the value of your hard work. Hard work in a capped system is not a virtue. It is a biological tax paid by the ignorant. You must recognize that the normal life you are defending is actually a high-risk, low-reward scenario. You are carrying all the systemic risk, inflation, technological displacement, social decay, with none of the non-linear upside. You are a biological servant polishing the brass on a sinking ship. The extraction begins when you stop looking for security and start looking for leverage. Leverage is the radiator that cools the predator during the hunt. It allows you to apply massive pressure with minimal biological cost. The environment of 2026 is designed to harvest the linear thinker. The social machine wants you focused on the middle of the curve, where you are predictable, taxable, and easily replaced. The giants thrive when you play the game of incremental progress because they own the ladder you are trying to climb. The persistence hunter does not use the ladder. He hacks the system from the outside. He understands that slepo povtorenie czujich scenariev, put v nikuda. Following the career paths of the previous generation is a guarantee of extinction in an era dominated by artificial intelligence and decentralized power. You must become a black swan hunter, positioning yourself in the fat tails of the internet, where a single moment of luck can be weaponized into a lifetime of sovereignty. If you are not exposed to the unexpected, you are not living, you are merely waiting to be recycled. Recognition of this asymmetry is the only way out of the mud. You must have the coldness to abandon the safe path and the discipline to maintain your traps collapse until the world finally breaks in your favor. The primary barrier to mastering asymmetric risk is not the complexity of the math, but the weakness of your own biological cooling system. You are a high-maintenance organism designed for immediate feedback loops. Your brain craves the dopamine of the small win to justify the expenditure of energy. When you set a black swan trap, a business, a digital asset, a strategic position, and the world responds with nothing but absolute crushing silence for months on end, your internal temperature begins to rise. You enter a state of thermal panic. Your amygdala, sensing the lack of immediate return, interprets the silence as a failure, a sign that the hunt has moved on and you are left to starve in the dust. The nice guy cannot survive this silence. He begins to fidget with his strategy. He tweaks the variables, he changes the message, and eventually he abandons the trap altogether to return to the safety of the linear world. He burns through his metabolic reserves in a frantic attempt to find a guarantee in an uncertain landscape. He lacks the thermal hardening required to stay motionless in the midday sun while the environment tests his resolve. The apex predator understands that the silence is not an absence of progress. It is the cold room where the outlier is being prepared. He has decoupled his internal state from the external noise. He knows that if the trap is set with the correct convexity, the weight is merely a biological tax that he must pay with the currency of his own patience. We are now bisecting the biology of the dead zone, showing you how to manage your internal heat when the results are invisible and why your current need for constant validation is the primary leak in your sovereign fortress. You are currently overheating because you are still looking for a pat on the back from a world that doesn't even know you exist. Let us analyze the physics of the strategic freeze. In the wild, the persistence hunter knows that the most dangerous moment is the period of absolute stillness before the strike. During this phase, every unnecessary movement is a thermal disaster. If you are constantly checking your metrics, constantly asking for opinions, and constantly revising your plan because you feel anxious, you are leaking the very energy required to maintain the hunt. This is high-time preference behavior, the mark of the prey. The prey lives in a state of constant low-level agitation because it has no plan beyond the next 10 seconds. The sovereign man, however, has achieved neurochemical detachment. He has mapped his environment, he has calculated the asymmetric odds, and he has committed his energy to the fat tails. Once the traps are set, he enters a state of clinical hibernation. He occupies his time with the maintenance of the fortress, refining his tools and hardening his perimeter, but he does not fret over the outcome. He understands that the black swan is an event of high entropy. It cannot be forced, only invited through persistent presence. Your current inability to handle the dead zone is evidence that your internal governor is still set to the frequency of a servant. You are looking for a master to tell you that you are doing a good job. The predator is his own master. He finds satisfaction in the precision of the set, not just the blood of the kill. Consider the entropy of the impatient mind. Every time you experience a motivation collapse because a black swan hasn't landed in your first 30 days, you are performing an act of self-sabotage. You are training your nervous system to respond only to easy dopamine, effectively lobotomizing your capacity for long-term dominance. You are becoming a short-term organism in a world where the only real wealth is found in the long-term outlier. The masses are currently drowning in this entropy. They are addicted to the quick win, the viral hit, and the instant profit. Because they cannot survive the dead zone, they never reach the asymmetric break. They stay in the middle of the bell curve, competing for the same scraps as the rest of the herd, while the sovereign man owns the entire tail of the distribution simply because he was the only one cold enough to wait. You must recognize that your feelings of doubt are nothing more than a biological filter designed to remove the weak from the arena. The environment is testing your systemic integrity. If you break, you were never a predator. You were just a summer guest. To move beyond this state, you must priznaj, što ti zavias, in your own need for certainty. You must admit that your current anxiety is a sign that you are still anchored to a prey-based reality. We must address the sovereignty of the cold eye. To stay in the hunt, you must learn to view your failures, the empty traps, as data points, not as character flaws. In an asymmetric model, failure is a low-cost byproduct of the search for the outlier. If you lose $100 or 10 hours of time on a bet that had an infinite upside, you haven't lost. You have simply paid the entry fee for the next opportunity. The apex predator does not get emotional about the entry fee. He pays it with clinical indifference and moves to the next position. He understands that slepo povtorenie chujik scenariev put vinikuda, that trying to follow a safe linear path provided by the social machine is the highest risk of all, because it guarantees a capped, mediocre existence with 100% certainty. You must have the coldness to be wrong 9 times in a row so that you can be spectacularly right on the 10th. This is the asymmetric creed. If your ego cannot handle the 9 small wrong moments, you will never see the black swan. You are currently protecting your reputation among people who are already dying, while sacrificing the chance to become immortal in the hierarchy of the new world. The first movement of your thermal hardening is the clinical audit of your validation loops. You must identify every person and every habit that provides you with fake feedback. You must shut down the signal. Stop talking about your plans. Stop seeking the approval of those who have no skin in your game. Move your operations into the dark room of absolute privacy. This is where the real work of the black swan hunter takes place. You must reach a state where your own internal mission is the only signal that registers. You must be able to stand in the dead zone for as long as the cycle requires, maintaining your focus with the cold precision of a machine. This is not hope. This is strategic endurance. It is the realization that the world is a chaotic, non-linear system, and that your only chance of dominance is to be the most patient, most observant, and most persistent entity on the field. Recognition of this reality is the final requirement for the extraction. You must vypíši svoj samye očividně iluzí regarding the fairness of the market. The market isn't fair. It's asymmetric. It rewards the one who can endure the heat while everyone else is running for the shade. Stand up. Stop looking at the clock. Fix your gaze on the fat tails and prepare to stay in the silence until the world finally surrenders to your presence. The black swan has landed. The sky is falling for the masses. The giants are in a state of terminal hypothermia, and the safe linear world has just been vaporized by the very volatility it tried to ignore. For the unevolved, this is the apocalypse. For you, the persistence hunter, who has been standing in the silence of the dead zone, this is the dawn of the new summer. But here is the final lethal truth. Most men are destroyed by the very outlier they spent their lives searching for. They find the black swan, they capture the asymmetric windfall, and then they proceed to drown in the sudden influx of energy. They treat the harvest like a lottery win rather than a territorial expansion. They take the surplus life force and they immediately convert it back into the fur of the consumer, the toys, the status symbols, and the hollow approvals of the herd they just escaped. In doing so, they signal to the environment that they are still prey with a temporary surplus. They have no architecture to contain the power, no systems to stabilize the volatility, and no sovereign internal law to govern the new scale of their existence. Within months, the entropy of their own success has recycled them. We are now presecting the consolidation of the outlier, showing you how to turn a temporary asymmetric break into a permanent biological dynasty, and why your current identity is the primary barrier to your final transformation. You have survived the hunt, now you must survive the kill. Let us analyze the pathology of the amateur harvest. When a black swan event delivers a non-linear reward, whether it is a financial explosion, a massive spike in global influence, or a sudden collapse of a competitor, your nervous system experiences a systemic shock. You are flooded with dopamine, and your OODA loop begins to spin out of control. You enter a state of hyperarousal where you begin to believe your own myth. You start to think that the black swan was a result of your genius rather than your positioning. This is the first step toward extinction. The moment you stop being a student of the outlier and start being its master, you have lost the predatory edge. You must recognize that success is a thermal hazard. It makes you visible, it makes you heavy, and it makes you a target for every parasite in the hierarchy. Most of you are currently dreaming of this moment, but you are utterly unprepared for the weight of it. You are a low-voltage organism praying for a high-voltage strike. If the strike happens today, it will fry your circuits and leave you as a smoking ruin in the middle of a world that is already moving on. The masses are currently biological scavengers. They wait for the black swan to hit someone else so they can rush in and harvest the scrap. They follow the success stories with a mix of envy and imitation, attempting to perform a blind repetition of the winner's scenario. They believe that if they buy the same things the winner buys and talk the same way the winner talks, they will share in the sovereignty. They are wrong. They are merely the cleanup crew of entropy, recycling the energy of those who were too weak to hold their territory. To move beyond this scavenger state, you must priznaj, što ti zavias. Admit that your current dream of success is just a consumer's hallucination. You must admit that you are currently incapable of managing the power you crave. This is the only way to begin the construction of the sovereign battery, the internal and external infrastructure required to store, manage, and weaponize the asymmetric windfall. Sovereignty is the ability to turn a temporary outlier into a permanent law. If you cannot do that, you are just a lucky slave, and your luck will eventually run out. Consider the architecture of the immortal fortress. When the black swan delivers the energy, your first movement must be the immediate cauterization of the leak. You do not increase your lifestyle, you increase your insulation. You use the surplus to buy your way out of the rental matrix forever. You secure the digital and physical route. You harden your perimeter against the status leeches and the professional victims who will suddenly appear at your gates. You must have the coldness to remain invisible, even when you have the resources to be the most visible person in the room. This is the standard of the apex. The real power is the power you don't show. It is the automated engine that continues to hunt while you are in the silence of your fortress. It is the unhackable network that provides you with intel while your competitors are drowning the noise. You must realize that samomune vitashchit, that as the scale of your hunt increases, you need more than just your raw human hardware. You need the systems of dominance that operate independently of your emotions. You need the strogo opisanai marshrutt to guide you through the transition from hunter-owner. The environment of 2026 is a winner-take-all arena. The gap between the linear slave and the asymmetric sovereign is becoming an unbridgeable chasm. Once you have captured the black swan, you must use that advantage to close the gates behind you. You must create barriers to entry that make it impossible for the unevolved to follow. You annex the market, you secure the attention frequencies, and you build the algorithmic walls that protect your dynasty from the next cycle of winter. You must vypishi svoj samye ochevidnie iluzii regarding the fairness of your position. It isn't fair. It is the result of your willingness to endure the dead zone while everyone else was seeking the shade. You do not owe the world a seat at your table. You owe your ancestors and your future the absolute preservation of your dominance. Recognition of this duty is the final act of sovereignty. You have moved from a participant in the world to its architect. The old rules no longer apply to you. You are the outlier. You are the black swan.